You're listening to the VR-verse, a virtual reality podcast where two friends talk all things VR. Now, let's join your hosts, the VR Realm and Dr. Oculus.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 43 of the VR-verse podcast. With this month we're joined by Rob Yescombe, writer, director extraordinaire, and also my usual lovely co-host, Dr. Oculus VR.
Good evening.
I'd like to thank you, Rob, for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you on here.
It's a pleasure and an honour. Let's see if we can undo that over the following hours.
Good luck. My first exposure to you, and you probably did this a million times, so I'm one of many, but I was recommended by a million people to play The Invisible Hours. And I'll be brutally honest, I took one look at it and I went, this is a storybook and I'm going to play it for like 2 minutes and then I'm never going to play it again. And I don't think it warrants the price tag that is being asked of it. And everybody's like, no, you need to play it. And then eventually I gave in and I bought the game experience. And then I started playing it on the internet. And as I'm sat there playing on it, I'm getting to different parts in the story. And then somebody in chat came in and was just like, what do you think is happening right now? And I was like, I don't know. And they started asking me all kinds of really probing, leading questions that really made me think about the story and about what was happening. And they're like, all right, and who do you think's done it? And it just really elevated the experience to such a level that I was like, this is beyond. Like, you are really, like, you're a big fan of this game, aren't you? And then it was like, I wrote the game. I was just blown away. And then I was like, wait, you're in my stream? And you elevated that experience for me so much that I kind of wish everybody could have that experience, but you only have a finite amount of time.
Well, we sold so few copies originally that probably everybody did have that experience.
But yeah, it just that was my experience of The Invisible Hours. And sure enough, like I played and replayed that game to the point where it became one of the few games on Steam where I went for every single achievement of it because it's a masterpiece. And I understand now why everybody was going crazy about that game.
Thank you.
But it's also one of those games that you can't be like, oh yeah, you need to play it because of X, Y, and Z, because the more people tell you, it's horrible that you can't tell people the reason why they should play it, just that they need to, because people need to play it.
You're very kind. It's interesting because here we are talking about the game. I think a whole generation of players don't even know that it exists. They don't even know what it is. So for anyone uninitiated, Invisible Hours was a first generation VR game. I started writing it in 2015. We launched in 2017. I think it was middle of 2017. And where in those early days, I didn't really know what best practices were for VR. All of that was still to be discovered. The one thing that we knew was going to be interesting was observation. So then we think, well, okay, how do you build a game purely from that? And if you have, I think your instinct about what you thought the product was before you played it was one of the hurdles we had to get over, which is to say, well, this is not just like a 360 video story. This is an entirely different thing. For anybody who doesn't know, I'll explain what it was in a minute. But we knew that the one thing everybody could do in VR, no matter what, is look around. Your grandma can look around. She doesn't need to know how to play something. So working backwards from that, we said, well, okay, what type of experience is about observation? And we thought, well, it's murder mystery, right? Everything feels like it has importance. That's what we want to try and build towards. So what The Invisible Hours is it's a murder mystery, a sort of Agatha Christie style. So it's in a mansion on an island in a storm. And normally certainly from people who are from outside of games, because I deal a bit in movies and TV as well, whenever I try and explain it to them, when they think about what a game story is, they always think about branching narrative, right? Left door, right door, upstairs, downstairs. But as we know, narrative in games, it can be a much more complex equation than that. But in spite of all the ways that narrative has been explored in games, the one thing it's never done is actually mimic the structure of real life. Which is that as we sit here, the three of us, at this exact moment in time, Paul, you are the protagonist, and me and Doc are the humble supporting characters. But at the exact same moment in time, sorry guys, I'm the protagonist, and you guys are the supporting characters. And the people walking past the window over here are background to us, but we're background to them. And all of those stories need to be perfectly synchronized. Every character needs to be equally important and equally unimportant in order for the shape of reality to exist in the way that we are currently experiencing it at this exact moment in time. So we're in this mansion. You might walk into that mansion and see, well, here's a detective standing over a dead body. You can choose to follow him upstairs to the attic. There's no binary choice. You can decide how long you want to hang out with him, but whenever you're with him, you're going to miss what's happening in the drawing room, the dining room, the bedroom, the basement. And so the output of that is that all three of us could have totally different opinions on who the murderer is, how many murders took place, even what genre of story you're inside of, purely based on how you behave inside that unit of time. And the thing that's so wild about it is that even though the story is always the same, and we will all see all of the content, the way that you arrive into the content changes your experience. So the genesis of this idea actually came from, I was reading an old Reddit thread where new parents were deciding what order to show the Star Wars movies to their kids. Because if you show the original trilogy, who you think Vader is very different for those three movies. Versus if you start with Phantom Menace, or you do some other kind of re-chronology of it.
Yep.
The example we used was that if you walk around a corner and see someone kicking a dog, that's a bad guy. But if you walk around 10 seconds earlier, you'll see the dog was biting him. And now your opinion changes. The truth is always the truth. Just a question of when you saw it and how you arrived into it. So, Doc, maybe you remember there's a scene in The Invisible Hours where two characters, man and the woman, they feel some kind of connection when they meet each other. Eyes meet across the room. And they have a kind of romantic kind of scene together, and at the end they kiss. And you might think, well, this is a romantic scene. But maybe you arrived into that scene and you know, oh, he's a murderer. He's not who he said she is, and she doesn't know. Or maybe you arrived in another way and you realize, oh, she's not who she said she is either. Or maybe you arrived in another way and you realize they're actually father and daughter and neither of them know, and you're watching them make out. The scene is always the same. Your experience is totally different, just about where you are in space and time during the story. And one of the things we really wanted to push when we designed it is it's not about winning. It's not about mechanical victory. You can players have total freedom in time and space, which means the first second of the story you can pause it, skip right to the end of the story and say, well, I just want to see who the murderer is. Great, go ahead. Because the murder doesn't just go that way. It also goes this way, and this way, and this way. You can't solve it by trying to outsmart it, but we give you total freedom in space and time. So that meant that when we, as game designers, we often talk about emergent gameplay, right? Things you didn't quite plan for, but the systems allow for. The thing that we discovered was people would create dramatic ironies or clues that we didn't even plan. And I want to stress, I planned that thing meticulously. But even in spite of that, there were theories that people figured out that I was like, wow, that is either true or super interesting misinterpretation. But just because of how they behave inside that unit of time. And the other thing that's so wild about it is that when you take game story and present choice in that way, in that completely dynamic way, where the content is not waiting for you to arrive, it's always happening. You can create more variables for a pretty small budget versus like if you were doing like a BioWare game, right? If you're doing Mass Effect, you're spending $150 million on production, and half of it players are never going to see, because every time you go left instead of right, you spent all the money to make it. No one's going to see it. And okay, some of that is mitigated with cross-pollinated assets. But it meant that we're creating all of that dynamic choice, but every asset is paying for itself.
Mhm.
Yeah, like you say, as you probed me at the sort of the key points in the story, and you were asking me like, where do you think this is going, and where does this come from, and things like that, and I don't think I don't think you saw me towards the end, because I did it over a number of days, maybe even weeks. I think you just kind of missed it, but I was miles off every time you asked me. I was miles off, which just absolutely blew me away. And it's almost like a cult for me. Like I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I am in with everybody else being like, yeah, you should totally play The Invisible Hours. And I think it's one of especially the very unique aspect of it. And when I say unique, I don't think I've seen anything since, and I definitely saw nothing before
Well,
that's even close to it.
Why it's so difficult to make something like that is that, for example, let's say you and I are characters in a scene, and I know as the writer, okay, I've got to get you out of this scene at 1 minute 4 seconds. I've got another scene happening somewhere where I want you to enter at 3 minutes 19 seconds. Not only am I calculating when to get you out of this scene and when I'm going to get you into this scene might be 3 stories up in the mansion. So we're not just calculating the scenes, we're calculating the speed and distance between those scenes. And that's across dozens and dozens and dozens of intersecting scenes at the same time. And when I wrote it, like interactive theatre, like Punch Drunk and all that stuff has sort of come up around the same time. They were just after us when we started. And if you were in a live production like that, live interactive theatre, if we were actors and you're running 5 seconds late, well, the actors in the scene up there that are waiting on you, they can fill, they can improvise.
Yeah.
But here, everything is pre-baked animation. So if we capture on the mocap stage 5 seconds out, 7 hours of narrative breaks.
Mhm.
So everything has to be so meticulously planned. And of course, the irony of that is that ultimately what that product is selling is performance, right? The story, the acting is what it's selling. But if you, well, to backtrack a little bit, in order to achieve something that mathematically precise, we did something that's very unusual for games, which is that we spent weeks rehearsing off the motion capture stage, just in a back room. Of course, if you rehearse to that level of precision, you are driving the humanity out of the performance because it becomes robotic. Like, oh shit, I'm going to be there. So what we ended up doing was, it seemed like, it sounds kind of crazy to say, but it worked, I think, which is we drilled the scenes to a 5 second margin. And then we said, well, on the day, we're going to tighten up those 5 seconds somewhere. And that's the gamble that kind of keeps the performance alive when you get to the stage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's problem number one, is the mathematics against the risk of undermining what the game is selling, which is these performances are hopefully great. The other part is, in order to write what we ended up calling spherical narrative, where all these pieces are all interdependent on each other, and have a bunch of concurrent stories all running in the same unit of time, you can't write that story without knowing exactly to the second how long every scene is before you write it. So it means that you have to have a sufficient experience level in screenwriting, in directing and execution, and in games and animation and games production to know, okay, I will commit this scene will be 1 minute 21 seconds. This scene will be 2 minutes 4 seconds. When you get in there and you're like, oh, I wish I had time to sit, you can't, because you move it by a second, everything shatters. So that's why you don't see that type of thing, because it takes an enormous leap of faith with enormous amounts of experience backing it to say, I'm going to commit to the length of every moment in this story without knowing what the story is.
So I didn't really, Doc, I didn't really have the pleasure of you giving me hints. I played it prior to release because I had a good contact at Tequila Works who sent me to review. And in my review, I said it's hard to explain it without giving stuff away. But it's something that you have to it's something you have to experience, because
Yeah.
once you experience it, I think I put 8 hours in, and I said I still don't believe I've seen everything I could see. Like, I really don't. I've probably missed something somewhere.
Yeah, I get that. And it was one of those, especially at the time, like you say, the timeline that it came out as 2017. That's prime time for an era where VR didn't know how to move yet.
Mhm.
So you've
Right.
got like your Vive ones, which people are like, oh yeah, I can push these buttons and get around, and it's fine. And then I imagine you had a very good time on PSVR
In
because
what sense?
the PSVR movement was always bad for them. It was either you have these little, light bulbs on sticks, and you have no way of pushing a character around. So, like Skyrim, they had to get a bit creative with pushing a button to walk forward and things. Or you have to use a controller, which then you don't have the ability to use your hands and stuff. Whereas that kind of content can sort of lend itself quite well to a non hand tracked kind of game. Essentially, it would be quite
Well,
good. So,
it's all hand tracks. The difference was that, again, this is first generation VR, where everyone at the time was super paranoid about people getting sick. And so at that time, like, smooth movement was off the table. We're like, oh, we can't risk it, right? So people didn't even want to include it in the game at that point. I feel like we've jumped way ahead, right? Nobody knows who I am, really, or even why we're talking about this. So just to bring people up to speed, so my name's Rob Yescombe. I've been a writer, designer, and narrative director in games for almost 20 years. A little bit in movies now, but still have a deep passion for VR. Still try and keep my oar in on that stuff. The reason why we're generously talking about this ancient, dusty old tome of a game is the studio that I made it with, Tequila Works, sadly went into receivership, went bust this year. And as is the way when the company game studio goes bust in Spain, the administrator auctions off their assets. And so I found myself in a completely unique situation where I would be able to reacquire this game that I wrote and directed, and maybe see if we could remaster this thing for this generation of headsets. So the master plan is we're going to try and bring this thing back. We know that the product is good. It reviewed really well. User reviews were great. But when we launched in 2017, not to disparage anyone, but we had a third-party company projecting hardware sales data for us. And they projected PSVR would do 6 million units last quarter of that year. They only sold 500,000. When we launched, there was no audience to sell the product to. And as time went on, we kind of got left behind. But what we have is a wonderful, hopefully people still believe, a wonderful game that remastered, updated, include best practices for VR today, I think would really blow people's socks off. So that's what we're planning to do.
that was absolutely, yeah. That was one of the things that I was actually hoping to, probe you about, because, like you said, in older generation, the 2017 generation, it was new and it came out for them. And the thing is, you can still buy it today. If I'm not mistaken, still on Steam, right?
It is, yes, but no one currently is managing that Steam page. So I'm trying to sort out the details of getting behind that.
So yeah, I mean, by all means, if you are a PC VR player, please definitely do go and check that out. But then, like you say, there is a whole new generation of mobile VR users now. There's PSVR 2 that's sat there wanting more content. Everybody wants more content for it. And so I was hoping to hear you say that you were going to try and get it out there, because I think it's been long enough that I could actually go back to it and have minimal recollection as to what's happening in the story, and I could actually enjoy it a second time, or third. I think it would be
I
at this
think
point.
that, by the time we launch that remaster, in all likelihood, we're going to be at the 10-year anniversary, I think. So, or
Okay.
maybe not. We'll see how it goes. But I don't want to commit to anything yet because we're still figuring out the details. But I know that we can, make that thing that really feels like best in class today.
Yeah.
I think, like Doug was saying, like there's not really been anything like it again. So even for new players, it's going to be something they've never really experienced before because there's been nothing on the market like it since.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like I say, I thoroughly look forward to that. And I mean, a free idea, zero. If you can include like a director's commentary, where at certain points you pop in and you're just like, what do you think is happening right now? Like just an optional toggleable extra. Honestly, I want everybody to have that experience because it elevated it in such a way. I cannot thank you enough for giving me that experience. It was absolutely amazing, and it really did. You got me thinking about stuff that I was just, watching the stories like, and I was just sort of casually playing my way through it. But you truly made me think about it in a way that I was never going to get to by my own monkey brain self, and it just made it so much better. So that's the thing. That's where I was introduced to you. And that essentially then not only obviously massive fan of the Invisible Hours, but I then became a fan of you. Which means I've then gone out and you were mentioning earlier, you ventured into the likes of Hollywood. Outside the Wire. For those of you that don't know, Netflix movie. It's got an Avenger in it, darn it. It's got Anthony Mackie in it, which I was once again. I don't know. Is this your thing? I'm watching that, and then halfway through, it just goes, "Oh no, I'm just going left," and then it just disappears down a completely different route, and you're like, "What?" Yeah, phenomenal movie. And then at the time of the Invisible Hours thing, I was playing it, and then my wife, of course, says, "Oh, you've been doing? Oh, I'm playing this game." The Riot came in and was chatting to me. It was really interesting. She's like, "Oh, that's nice." And then years later, we sit down and we watch a movie with John Cena in it, and she's laughing away and she's having a great time. And then afterwards, I turned to her, I was like, "Do you know I said I was streaming and the writer of a game came in?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "He wrote that?" She's like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, I've spoken to the person that wrote that movie." And she's like, "No." She couldn't believe it. It was you are my claim to fame at this point. My wife was so impressed.
Well, that's a high honor. You're my claim to fame, so deal with that.
There we go. Well, you are the NPC in my story. So yeah, it's I this point in time, I don't. The other thing that I've obviously been keeping tabs on things. 3 minute line. Can you talk about that the latest ish project?
I can say we're still figuring it out, but yeah,
Okay,
it's a movie where it's about a guy who has to punch someone in the face every 3 minutes or he'll explode.
Doesn't that sound awesome?
It's gonna be great. I would say we're still a ways off, but we're getting there.
Right. Okay. Because I think it was. I vaguely remember hearing about it last year at some point. And I was like, oh, I wonder how far down the line you are with that. If there was any sort of casting or anything like that, or anything that's public.
Not
I'm not.
yet.
No.
The thing that's interesting about that movie and about the film stuff that we're doing is there is a very strong game design sensibility to it because having worked at some pretty data-driven companies and games, I'm fairly cognizant of what's actually happening behind the UI on Netflix, Amazon, whatever, which is that the odds of a user rowing across 5, columning across 10, landing on the tab, converting to a view at random is 0. No one's doing that. And the way that the studio de-risks that problem is either with cast, who are very expensive, algorithm, whose influence ends on the edge of the platform, or with premise that's free. Because ultimately, a big part of the success of any movie is two people who I'm never going to meet. One of them's seen the movie, one of them hasn't, and they're going to say, "What's the movie about?" And if that person can't answer that question in a really clear, succinct, persuasive way, we're losing an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why something like 3-minute warning is very premisey, but also is very game-like in so much as, when you're designing a game, the number one thing you're looking for is a single rule that's an engine that makes different types of fun. So in movie terms, if you look at something like Nightmare on Elm Street, right? A great rule. If I go to sleep, Freddy's going to get me. I don't even need to know who Freddy is, but I know that rule is going to make dozens and dozens of sequences that are all completely unique, that single rule, that single engine. So that to me is the way we try and design film, because I think it's easier for people to understand what it is in a very crowded marketplace and in the UI that makes discoverability very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I basically with Jackpot, I just saw a bit of the synopsis. Like, I need to just give that a try. But again, like you said, that was just a random opportunity. I seen it on Amazon. I was like, oh, what's that? Read the first line of the synopsis. I was like, right, I don't want to know anymore. I'm just gonna put this on.
Right. So for anyone that doesn't know, Jackpot it's an action comedy directed by Paul Feig, who directed Bridesmaids, The Spy. It stars John Cena, Awkwafina, and Simu Liu, and it's about a kind of dystopian future where if you win the lottery, everybody else with a ticket has 24 hours to kill you and take the money. That's the whole thing. So you can see there that clearly it's a rule that makes very different types of fun.
Yeah. You can make
it. And then that is the premise that you can throw at somebody and they'd be like, okay, yeah, now I want to see this.
Yeah.
This movie. And then like you said, the getting people in the door. It was the whole John Cena and Spy is basically my wife's favorite movie. So I was like, oh yeah, so I know my audience when I was like, yeah, so you like wrestling and you like Spy. Let's watch this. Whereas obviously my motivation, a bit more writer based. So it was, I once again cannot recommend it enough. I truly can't. It is like I've said it to many a person long before I even knew you were coming on the show. It's just genuinely, it is a great movie. Like, you have to watch Jackpot. And so we are talking about the present at the moment. In the past, you said you've been working in the industry for some 20 odd years, which my good friend Google informs me that you've worked on many, many different games, up to and including a no, it's completely gone. It was Blade Runner. It was Blade Runner, I think.
Well, actually, that project I think might be in development hell. I did some work on it a while back and then went quiet, so I don't really know what's happening with
that.
Okay. Sadly, it's the way that a lot has gone lately, between studios letting staff go and studios not being able to carry on. Yeah, they are kind of. It's a very tough world, a very tough market at the moment. So
I want to talk about that briefly because I think it is important that I saw the writing on the wall a long time ago. When I first went freelance, was maybe 15 years ago. I said that we are inevitably going to move to a film type model. There are no film studios with staff who are there with a burn rate. Is that you come together for a production and everybody goes to the wind. The reason why that can work is because those crews are unionized. And that's the thing that we're missing in games, is that while we're in this moment of transition where everyone's like, oh shit, all these layoffs, we need games unions now. That's how you protect against this, the shape that the business is going to become is already mostly there.
Yeah.
So, I'm all right because I'm a salty sea dog, I've been around a long time. But for people who are, in the early years of their career, they need unions to help protect their interests. So if anyone is listening who is that way inclined, we should, Let's get on it.
Yeah.
Long overdue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, like you say, that does sound like one of the better solutions to what is becoming just a horrible problem.
It's the only solution, because we cannot have a freelance industry that doesn't have protections.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. It's not. No one can survive that. Ultimately.
Not to mention not only just like the job security, but also the working conditions that you hear about, and people working ridiculous amounts of hours for borderline abusive environments in certain situations. I'm not saying every game studio is like that. I know plenty of developers that I'm confident to say that is not that situation. The amount of people that you see flock towards them and towards the CEOs, and it's like, yeah, no, I love this guy. Like, I've been at their birthday party, and they're surrounded by staff. I don't know many people that would go to a CEO's birthday party just for fun, sort of thing, unless they were great people. So small indie studios and things like that, that's totally fine. But then you hear about people that had a terrible time at insert big AAA studio here. And so the union would allow them to have somewhere that they can go and be like, okay, we need to sort this, and they can step in and help them in that situation. So it is. Hopefully, it can't happen soon enough. I mean, we have a friend, Jimmy, who's he seems to get hired, promote the living heck out of a game, and then like, oh yeah, we don't need you anymore, and it's just gone.
But listen, let's be real. Like, that is the shape that the business must go in. Yeah. It's okay for us to have a gig economy, or not gig economy, have a freelance industry. It's not okay to have a freelance industry without union protection.
Yeah,
the film industry is, okay. People struggle for work when we get strikes and we get problems in the business, but broadly speaking, the shape of it functions and has functioned for a long time. It's okay for people to move between jobs, not be sitting on staff when they don't have active work to do. Like, that all makes perfect fiscal sense for a company. Sure, fine, but we need sufficient protections in place.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's segue out. Let's get out of this. Let's segue out of this music. Come on.
Well, I was gonna say, have you seen the trailer for the new Running Man film?
I have. Yeah, it was when we were doing Jackpot, because we were Edgar is a friend of Paul's, who directed the movie. Edgar Wright, who did Running Man, and so it was kind of weird that we were realizing that we were kind of making the same thing at the same time. Ultimately very different products and very different timelines.
Yeah.
But there was definitely an anxiety as we were putting it together that maybe he was going to beat us to the punch.
Yeah, I watched that and I was just like, a weird dystopian future where somebody's going to come into a vast quantity of money, but they're going to be murdered for it by anybody and everybody. I'm like, sounds vaguely familiar. So it's a different take on the original flick in that sense, and I historically have very much enjoyed what Edgar has done. Naturally, being Brits, all of us, they were kind of major champions of comedies in the early 2000s. Time has lost all meaning. I'm that old at this point. Yeah, just like your Shawnee, the Cornetto trilogy, Spaced, and things like that. Yeah, it made Edgar certainly a household name in my house anyway. So then when you see that he's gonna do the Running Man, I imagine, based on the Ant-Man situation, that he's gonna have the kind of creative freedom that he wants to make that movie. So hopefully it is going to be an Edgar movie and not a movie by committee. So hopefully touching things that used to be trees.
So, like with them,
dead air, Paul. Dead air.
Yeah, I love it.
I have to stop myself from talking because I won't ever stop otherwise. And I have to stop myself. And so I've got the you did a stint at Free Radical.
I did. That was the
Is that where you
first studio that
I was gonna say, is that where you started out?
yeah, my first ever job in games was there, and I had a very strange journey into that, which is that I trained as a fine artist. I thought I was going to be a performance artist at art school, and I remember looking around at the percentage of people who were employed at the end of this course, and it was about 0.3%. I thought, I think I need to try something else here. I was very lucky, had a tiny little shoebox of a studio in an old warehouse that was opposite another equally small studio that a two-person Indian production company worked at. And I ended up moonlighting, writing for Indian cable TV while I was doing this fine art degree. And the total budget that we had for this weekly show that we did, it was kind of like a VJ sketch comedy show, £250 total, which meant we couldn't afford to hire anybody. So I had to learn to write, to direct, to edit, to produce, to do the whole thing because we had no money. And while I was doing that, I wrote a script for a sitcom. It never got made, but at the time, the UK government had a new writers scheme called TAPS, and I was shortlisted for a comedy writing award for this sitcom. And by incredible coincidence, Free Radical, for some reason, happened to get in touch with this very obscure awards body, TAPS, and said, "Hey, do you want to write a game?" And I said, "Well, I've been playing games since I was a kid. I'll do it." I went overnight from this £250 a week show to a $30 million game with no idea how games were made, what real writing was. I had tons of enthusiasm, no craft. And these were in the days of, this is around 2004, I think this is happening. End of 2004. These are the days when the games industry was still like the Wild West. The money was pouring in, but we still had a lot of very old thinking. And the way that people's careers came about was very strange. Like the guy who was sitting next to me, who was lead animator on that game, the job he was doing right before was he was a fishmonger. And the other guy who was lead designer, he was a baker in Sainsbury's. And somehow it all sort of came together. We were trying to make a big, expensive game. The average age probably of people working on that game was like 25. None of us really were at the level that I think we needed to be at. And then we ended up making this huge catastrophe of the game. It was the first game I was ever involved in. And so it meant that, I got a very expensive lesson in how not to make a bad game, which is you make a really bad one. And it was a strange experience for me because I'd had no background. And then to go overnight into that was just bizarre.
I was so excited for Haze. Haze was the reason I bought a PlayStation 3. I was like I was so hyped for it. And I played it, I was like...
This whole podcast is about you trying to get a refund, isn't it? That's what I understand.
He's on to us. Yeah, that was... And the thing is, you did have very big shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's obviously the pedigree that came with
I'm Splitters.
The studio. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was a really strange time in so much as, when they recruited me, purely as a writer and as nothing else, it was in a time where the idea of a games writer didn't really exist because the writing that was happening in games was usually like a side thing that someone who was like a coder or a designer or an artist, whatever, they were like, "Oh, I could probably do that." But at that time, I want to say there was maybe 20 of us in the world at that time. Now there are hundreds and hundreds of games writers. But at that time, it was a really bespoke job that didn't really exist. And in fact, when they put me in the studio, my imagination was, coming from scrappy Indian TV to this huge budget game. I was like, well, we can have an office or something, right? Is that how it's going to work? When I got there, the studio was so full because they were like recruiting people to try and make this thing. That my desk was I want to say about the size of a school desk. They pushed into the fire escape corridor, so there was no room to put me. So I was the obstruction to the safety of others in the event of a fire. That was how I started my career.
You started safe from the event of a fire to going into a full on fire when the game released.
Perfect segue. Therefore. But yeah, it was. I mean, look, everybody there we were all trying our best, but none of us really had the experience necessary. I mean, it was in the days. This doesn't really happen anymore, but we were trying to make an engine at the same time as the game. And we had, I don't even remember, we probably had like, I don't know, 12 coders trying to make an engine from scratch on PS3. So,
I've heard PS3 was very hard to actually develop for as well.
Yeah.
Like
you hear
types
it's notoriously more difficult for the PS3 than the 360.
It took them ages to get orange box over and things in it because the Sega doesn't.
I think that's true, but I don't want to leave on that excuse. I think we were culpable for sure.
Yeah. The thing is, like, nobody sets out to make a bad thing.
No,
mostly.
Sure.
You were doing the best you could with what you had, and I guess that visions cross and don't meld, and you don't make perfection. And then, how much of it can really be blamed on the writing?
Well, the writing was bad as well. Let's be clear. I think this is true of all artists, which is that when we first start making art with a capital A, whatever form that is, the thing that brings you into it is that white hot magnesium burn. I want to make something. You don't know how. You don't have craft. That comes in time. What you hope is that the opportunities you're provided are not outscaled against the craft that you've acquired by that point. So I was lucky in so much as it was a big opportunity, but unlucky because I was absolutely not ready for it.
Yeah. And
yet, so many good things came out of it. Number one, all of the lessons about, these are the wrong things to do. Okay, it was expensive for Ubisoft, but a good lesson for the rest of us. And also that so many enduring friendships and relationships came out of that experience, because when you're in the crucible together, bond. I still have, like, on the Invisible Hours, the guy who was a fishmonger, he was my animation director. You stick together because you remember, that's how we don't make bad shit, is we pool our experience and we pull together.
Like, all I can say, because you had this look right in a sitcom, went to that and not really had much luck with it. I'm just glad it didn't put you off thinking maybe I can't write games, because obviously you've wrote some fantastic ones since then.
You're very kind. I mean, I didn't know it was bad at the time. That's the thing that keeps you going, right? Is that you meet artists all the time. Like, I'm out here in Hollywood, right? The town is full of people who are not ready for opportunity, but they got the drive, the excitement. They're just not ready. And I was one of them too. And I at least now, with the experience that I've had, I have the pragmatism to know there are certain things I'm not ready for. There are certain things I think I will never be ready for. And I kind of know the things I can do pretty well. But nobody drops in ready to go.
Yeah.
Just a question of how public the fuck up is going to
be. Yeah. That is absolutely, like, these words to live by for sure.
I think a big problem with Haze as well is Ubisoft were pushing it as it's a Halo killer. That was like its big thing, and it's just like Halo is one of the most.
Ubisoft were perfectly entitled to the investment they made to say it's going to be this, because that's what we were promising. Just that we didn't know how to do it. that's what it came down to. We all thought we were doing it, just didn't come together.
So was your exit from the company at that point then, was that voluntary, or was that when they went down the first time that you
so people who don't know, well, actually, so when Free Radical hired me, their initial plan was to keep me on for 6 weeks as a writer. I ended up staying with that crew for 6 years. And the reason why I stayed is because that ethos of, well, in Indian TV, I understand how to write, direct, edit, produce, do the whole thing. I took an interest in other people's departments to try and understand what are they capable of that maybe they're not being asked to do yet. what is the impact that my work has on them? And that makes you feel like a more indispensable part of that crew. You can be an asset, creative asset. So the story for Free Radical was that after Haze, we signed with LucasArts Battlefront 3 and 4 that we were going to do back to back. But this is separate to the EA one. And it was at the time where LucasArts were basically saying, "Oh, we're not going to do third-party titles anymore. We're just going to like license," which is how we ended up with the EA version. And they cut all third-party titles, including us. And because we had all of our eggs in the basket of 2 games back to back with them, that was as much as the studio could handle. That was the entire slate. And so by them pulling those games, they killed the company. I'm of the opinion that there were some good games happening. You know, I take a realistic view, but we had some pretty impressive stuff there. I mean, this is at a time where this is not going to sound that exciting to people now because this is a fairly commonplace thing. We were, I think, the first, open world game that had an engine that allowed you to walk around on the surface of a planet, get into a ship, fly up around the city, go up into the atmosphere, go up into space, board a Star Destroyer, and blow up the Star Destroyer. And while like a game of like 50 players is happening at the same time.
Yeah.
I can't stress this is 2009 that we were doing. Nobody was doing that. So
people still struggle today. Like, Battlefield is, big online multiplayer and whatnot, but
anyway, those Battlefront games were, I think, going to be pretty decent. And it was just an unfortunate confluence again of just how sometimes the business moves in a way and you haven't got your sure footing and it becomes apart. So, in fact, I didn't leave the company after those 6 years because what happened is we went into receivership the same way Tequila Works did. And when that happened, we had, I want to say, maybe 200 odd employees, went down to a skeleton crew of 30, of which I was one, to try and sell the company to another developer or to a publisher, which we did to Crytek. And we ended up becoming Crytek UK, which I was briefly creative director, worked on the multiplayer for Crysis 2. And then that studio went on to do ports of Crytek games, and then now ended up, I think, getting bought by Deep Silver is now Dambusters that did Dead Island 2 and other stuff as well. So the studio lineage kind of lives on, and there are still a few people from the original, first 40 employees at Free Radical who are still there at Dambusters now. And again, that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't rallied together. Those people would not still be at that studio if, when we went down to 30, we hadn't said, okay, we put out a bad title, and now we're in this tough spot with LucasArts. We could all run away and try and find other jobs. But we decided not to. And when we got bought by Crytek, everybody got their jobs again. All the people who'd been put into redundancy, all of them got their job offers again. Some of them had got jobs elsewhere and didn't come back, but many of them did. We were almost the same crew when we came back to make Crysis 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you would credit as a writer on Crysis 2. 3? 2.
2 and 3, wasn't it?
I did some background stuff on Crysis 2. I'm uncredited on Crysis 3. EA hired me to do some stuff in the background, but
right, okay. I was sort of trying to put the timeline together because they were, if that was the early 2000s, and then I was thinking you went freelance back at X time, so it was sort of the Crytek.
After Crysis 2, I went freelance, and
right.
My buddy, who was the animation director on the Invisible Hours, he had hopped over to one of the Sony studios in the UK that were doing
Farpoint,
a Tarzan game that ended up getting canned, but again was going to be really cool. So I came over as a freelancer to help out on that Tarzan game, but then did freelance on Crysis 3 after that.
Right, and then this is, like Paul just mentioned, brings us back round to that's where you... Did you get into... Because I know there was a few different sort of Crytek forays into VR back in the really early days, or was it
I wasn't involved. I wasn't. That was well after my time. A shame
So
though,
it
because I
was
think there was
Sony then?
yeah. So after that, I was at Sony on Tarzan. That was the studio that were making Wipeout. We're going to go and do a Tarzan. It was really cool. Sadly, that studio got closed, as was the style at the time. And then we went to Sony Runcorn after that, and then my sort of freelance careers have exploded out and did all sorts of stuff at the same time.
Was your first for into
Okay.
VR Invisible Hours, or was it Farpoint? Because they both came out the same year.
It was, so the first thing I saw in VR was Tilt Brush. Somebody had a prototype Vive, and that just completely just blew my mind. Actually, wait, that's not really true. The first thing I would try was the Google Cardboard thing.
So the first VR you tried was Tilt Brush in the Vive, then?
The first navigable VR, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in fairness, the Google Cardboard piece that I saw, I forget the name of it. It was the one great piece in it that I recall. It was the one where a train is coming across a lake towards you. As a sort of homage to that early piece of cinema where the people saw the train come towards the camera and they screamed and ran out of the cinema. It was meant to be something like that. I forget exactly what it was, but it was a really beautiful, artful piece. But yes, the first piece of navigable VR we could walk around was in Tilt Brush. And after that, I was like, oh, I'm all in on this. This is incredible. And the guys that showed me that, they were working on an early PSVR, a thing called How We Saw, which was a kind of artistic conceptual game where you're flying around on the back of a phoenix exploring the imagination of an author. So I sort of helped them out with that. And at the same time, I was outreaching to everybody that at that time it was also quite secret who was working in VR, but trying to do outreach and find out who was doing stuff. And I managed to get in touch with the Sony London team. And I think maybe through them, put me in touch with Impulse Gear, who showed me the vertical slice of Farpoint. And that was just insane to me at this point. Again, now we take it for granted, but standing on the surface of Mars, and it was just an environment demo, but standing on the surface of Mars, looking up at the stars, looking down at the sand, and tracing the laser sight on my pistol over the sand. I was like, this is it for me. I can't not be involved in this. But even though at the time I was committed to a bunch of other stuff, I was like, no matter what, I'm going to do this. So I ended up writing Farpoint at the same time as the Invisible Hours. And the reason why I got to make the Invisible Hours was because Tequila Works, the studio I made it with, we made a flat game together called Rime, R-A-M-E.
Yeah.
Sort of
very artistic.
It's a Studio Ghibli style game that was, quite an emotional experience for all of us. I think we really made something that was quite beautiful. And so they had a lot of trust in me off the back of that. Raul Rubio, who was the creative director at Tequila Works, had a lot of trust in me. It kind of gave me a carte blanche to do the Invisible Hours, which is an incredibly generous thing to do. I can't imagine anyone would let me do that again. And so I was doing that at the same time. I think there was another project maybe that year. So it was an insane year, but I just knew all this VR stuff was so exciting. I knew I had to be involved in it.
Yeah.
And from there, you never really looked back.
Yeah, and so you've worked on quite a few now, VR games.
Yeah, I did a little bit of time on Half-Life Alyx at Valve. God, well,
I'd not read that anywhere.
I'm sorry?
I'd not read that. I've read, a good chunk about you in my time. I didn't realize how involved in Half-Life Alyx you were, or if at all. Actually,
I was. They were trying to figure out what the story was. I came on. I was there for a year. My take on it was a much darker take on it. They ended up going much lighter with it than I intended. So I wouldn't say that the final product is mine. Is not really reflective of what I was suggesting. I got to spend some time with some very, very smart people there, which was great. And also it was at the time where they were building the index, so we got to be involved in the development of the hardware as well a little bit. for Arizona Sunshine 2 last year that I really loved.
Yeah.
I
I was
We're
far.
going to get to that. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, listen, don't let me drive it. You tell me where we're going.
Oh no! I have a bone to pick with you.
Please,
We'll get to that in a bit.
I welcome it.
So, did you have any
It-
involvement in Arizona Sunshine 1 at all? Or
No,
did
but
they just bring in for
I
2?
played it when it first came out on. I played it when it first came out on PC VR. Played it over and over and over again. And I just looked. So Sky Soleil, who's the voice actor, just fell in love with his performance in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of him, even though I liked the game, but because of his performance as that voice, I got in touch with Vertigo and said, look, whatever you guys are doing with this thing, I want to do the next one. And off the back of that, I got to write for Sky, who is the best for anyone who hasn't had a chance to work with him. It's fantastic. Totally unique voice. Really funny. Great improviser as well. I got to write the sequel to one of my favorite games in VR, which is great.
So that's, I mean, all right. So my problem is that Arizona Sunshine, like the story of it was fine, but then what you went and did is made Arizona Sunshine a story with like substance and a dog and peril and a dog and charm and a dog. And then I got to the biker bar. Now, what you don't know about me is I too have a dog, and he's a lovely dog. He's a rescue. And when we went to the pound, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this is Porter," and so I'm walking around this pound, and I'm like, "You are not Porter. What's your name? I don't know what your name is," but because he'd been presumably abused by men in the past, I had to go and befriend him in his own area, sort of thing. And so it just kind of kept coming out that he was Buddy. So it'd be like, "Oh, come on, Buddy, let's go for it." And then eventually that became his name. And then you get to the biker bar in Arizona Sunshine 2. And I don't want to spoil anything, but you made me have feelings.
It's interesting. We called the dog Buddy because number one, it was the thing that Sky's character, who we ended up calling Sonny, although he's not named in the game, the thing that Sonny needs most is a buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But also because I've observed so many people call their dogs Buddy, not as their given name, but just sort of over time becomes something that you call your dogs. I've also seen people call their kids that as well. It just becomes like a thing that people say. So I thought, well, this would be a great little thing to try and utilize.
What's done so well is like, even in the game, I mean, I had a dog at the time, which it wasn't called Buddy, but even in the game, even if you didn't have a dog, you can't stop but stroke it, throw a tennis ball for it. So even you get that connection to it, like, because it's just there. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's
we worked really, really hard. I don't think people have really discovered how deep that system goes with the dog. There's so much stuff that is just buried in the game. I mean, this is the thing you're always trying to do as a games writer, is to say, okay, in the million things a player could do in combination, is there a bucket of content at the end of that road that they're going to feel like, oh, I got something there? And on the dog stuff, like, the system actually was even more detailed and complex. There's so much stuff that we just didn't have the time and the scope to do. But it was the number one thing to say, okay, people are going to sit and mess around with this dog. Let's make sure that they really get something out of it. It's not just, a couple of things and that's it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of my first experiences in the game was with Paul, and he turned around to me and went, "Dog, watch this. Calls the dog over, and then plunks a hat on him. I'm like, "Oh, this is ridiculous." And then whoever's idea it was to make that dog a corgi, they need a massive raise.
Oh yeah,
Having that dog this big mean German Shepherd now all of a sudden is just a neck ripping corgi. That's just absolutely phenomenal.
It's like all real corgis.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's why the Queen had them. I'm telling you, they were attack corgis. They would kill anybody that went anywhere near her. So I can get mad at you for the certain story elements that it's been out that long. I can spoil it. The dog gets like massively injured, and I'm walking through the streets of Arizona carrying this bloody dog that's named after. Well, no, I named my dog first. It's the same name as my dog, and I'm crying in the headset because I'm carrying Buddy, covered in blood and glass, hating you. I mean, for anybody, all I'm saying is don't mess with dogs, but don't worry, the dog. I have to confess, I've only gotten to the military base. I've not finished the game. The dog survives this far, at least I can tell you. But yeah, the things that I've done with that. So to get the dog to where you need to get the dog to, you put him on top of a shopping trolley. But before that, I was just pushing him around in a shopping trolley anyway. How much of the non-storyline stuff did you have input to?
All of that was stuff we were working on together.
So it wasn't like here's a script, you go make a game. You were there the whole way sort of thing.
We were there. I was there right from the beginning, talking about how we wanted to try and build as much dog content as possible. So we were working in sabbatical. There was a very kind review. I forget who said it. Was it Beardy maybe said it? The story is about trying to survive the poison of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what I heard in Sky's performance in the first game. That is in there. I don't even know if it's necessarily on the page, but it's certainly in the performance. That was the nucleus that this whole thing grew from. Is that okay? Let's take the things that could be the antidote to the poison of loneliness and put them at risk.
And oh boy, howdy, did you do that? And you can hear it, like you say, in the performance as you're carrying the dog to the vets to get him to patch him up. You can hear like I don't think I'm gonna survive if this dog doesn't survive kind of peril in his voice, and just like I said, it just ruined me. It's ruining me just thinking about that moment now. Because
I really feel like Sky should have got some serious recognition for his performance in that game. Because yes, you're kind to say that about the writing, but his performance in that is next level. And I don't know why people didn't get it. I think maybe because the product is kind of poppy, right? You don't necessarily think there's going to be this very human performance at the center of it. He's incredible, and I wish people would revisit that for his work in it.
Yeah, as Doc was saying, like when he's carrying the dog, it's sort of a mix of emotion because the dog's hurt, emotion because he's maybe realizing I'm going to be alone again. I'm like,
right.
It just catches everything in it, especially in that part.
And so the whole premise essentially is that obviously the chopper crashes and he finds out that there is not only a patient zero but then also a potential cure, and the biker bar is when essentially you meet patient zero for the first time and you're thinking, right, I'm gonna be able to start like getting a cure for this and maybe seeing other human beings and getting the world back to normal. And so he has so much to deal with in that very moment of like patient zero getting away, and then obviously the Buddy and the potential loneliness, and like I said, Arizona Sunshine was supposed to be kind of just a fun zombie shooter. And you play Arizona Sunshine 1, and don't get me wrong, like you say, it is one of the early, if not, AAA kind of VR that we have. Arizona Sunshine, it's essential, but it wasn't essential because of its story. And then you elevated that with Arizona Sunshine 2 by adding all of these things to it that, like you say, it comes across as a light-hearted kind of zombie shooter, but in reality, it's way more than that. And I think that's one of the things that it yeah, that's why I was like, I expected just a light-hearted let's go kill some zombies and put on silly hats and be daft, and then like I say, you really start to feel for what I now know to be called Sonny, and the situation that he's for the longest time felt like he's the last guy alive,
Right.
and then
That was
finds out
interesting
one day
because
he's not.
it is all of those things that you're describing as well, which is that it's a bunch of silly stuff. But the thing that was important to me is, why is it a bunch of silly stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is because to resist the poison of loneliness is to fill the air with, I'm going to do something funny, I'm going to do something silly, I'm going to make a joke. Hopefully, not in a way that is going to bother players. We want the right density, but in terms of character motive, all of those jokes are there to survive the loneliness, and it's there in his performance that he somehow is able to make it funny and desperate at the same time. So shout out to Sky, incredible work.
And you got involved in the Twilight Zone. Was it just the one segment you wrote for that? Because I know it's like built into loads.
I wouldn't say I wrote it. That was more of a conceptual thing that I had. I was on it for a very short amount of time, but the concept that I gave them was, hey, wouldn't it be fun if the monster that chases you has your voice? And so when you're onboarded onto the game, this is spoiler, when you're onboarded into the game, it implies that the game is going to be about voice commands. But what we're really doing is taking pieces of your voice so that when the monster chases you, it can say stuff and sound like you. The game, ultimately didn't come out to standard, but I think that's still a really fun concept. And actually, you see it in like Lethal Company now, but we were doing it, back then.
Yeah.
And you say you essentially chased Arizona Sunshine 2. If you could get your hands on any kind of IP, whether it be movie or game or whatever, like what would be your?
It's obvious. It's the Matrix, right? It's the Matrix. That's the one thing that we should be doing. Is the Matrix.
Doesn't that terrify you though?
No, I mean, like doing the game of the Matrix. Like, it's, to me, it's a no-brainer. We should have a fantastic Matrix game. I understand maybe why they're a little bit on the back foot with the IP, because maybe the hardware isn't quite there yet. But whatever Meta are doing next for public-facing hardware, for public-facing headsets, that's not some like spatial computing thing. Like, let's do it. Why not? What are we waiting for? We were born for it. Like a massive, some kind of like co-op Matrix game. Come on.
I don't know. To this day, and I'm not ashamed of this. I've never watched The Matrix 4 because I don't know if I need more Matrix. Like, I don't know if I need something to change The Matrix 3 for me, which surely that fundamentally will do.
Well, there's a few things. Number one, there's a new Matrix movie on the way that the Wachowskis are not involved in. So who knows what that'll be. But this is more like the environment of the first movie is enough. Like, let's do Path of Neo or whatever. Like, there's something there.
Yeah.
In defense of Matrix 4, that I know a lot of people didn't like, I would say that I didn't love the movie, but I loved that it exists as a work of art, because boy, is it a work of art. By which I mean, there's something so evocative about how punk it is, by saying fuck you to the studio, to the concept, to the IP, to the history. It's really an interesting artifact. I don't think it's a great Matrix movie necessarily, but it's a great artifact.
I nearly, when I saw MPH was in it, I was like, okay, maybe I watch it for MPH. But I still couldn't bring myself to actually watch the movie. And I think the going back to one too many wells that I don't know whether I'm ready to go back to. Like if they turn around and said Back to the Future 4 or Back to the Future remastered, I don't think I need to go back to that. I was pleased for the Ghostbusters, the fourth time. It depends on what you count as a Ghostbusters story, essentially. But I don't know if I'm ready to go back to the Matrix. But if my big worry about that, unless it's got somebody that knows what they're doing, like yourself, is that it will become just a mishmash of mini games of things that you can do in VR. Because there's one of the things that you see a lot is there are essentially various different chunks of VR, and that becomes like a key thing in a game. Oh, this is an archery game, or this is a sword fighting game, or and they'll just be like, oh yeah, this is the climbing section, and this is the sword fighting section, this is the shooting section, and unless it's done right, it could very easily just become that, because the Matrix, essentially, you just manipulate the world however you want. So there's a very real danger of that, but I guess done right, I don't know. I don't. If you're attached to it, then I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, I'm in. But I don't. Oh, I'm pretty sure you'll sell it to me. But
Would you do it like
I don't.
What?
a bit like?
I have no idea what the game is. I'm just saying that as a piece of IP that is
If you got to get let loose,
inexplicably linked to VR, it's the Matrix. It's meant to be. Will it be a good product? I have no idea. Don't know what the product is, who does it, if someone would allow it. No idea. Who knows? Does it happen now? Does it happen 10 years from now? No idea.
Would you have it
You
a
can't
bit
be
like?
anxious about whether the product's good or bad, but is the IP born for VR? 1,000% it is.
You could sort of have it like Star Trek Bridge Crew. You've got someone there who has to be ready to unplug them, and while they're in doing stuff, like a co-op thing, you're sat there, I need to unplug it.
The most passive part of it is pull the plug.
You could just be the operator. I mean, yeah, that's. I suppose that's. It was not for broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose technically you could sort of do it in that sort of way where you're just watching it.
I was terrible at that. I was
unravel.
absolutely terrible at enough for
I think
broadcast.
there might be more dynamic things that we could be doing in the Matrix than being the guy sitting at the computer. I always really loved Superhot, like when you take off the VR headset in Superhot. Now, like, okay, we've seen a bit of like VR and VR before, but at the time that was a cool moment to be like, whoa, where am I?
Yeah, it was certainly one of the sort of the tentpole moments of VR was that, and there's a reason why it just lives on the front page of the Meta store. Absolutely.
What IP would you like to see adapted?
So we've actually fielded this before in the past, haven't we? And I have many favorite sort of worlds. I was very excited about the Ghostbusters game, and then I wasn't. I still to this day have managed to avoid playing the Ghostbusters game. I get myself into a situation where I choose my ending, and I don't acknowledge any more content that really comes after that. I chose my ending for The Walking Dead in like season 5, where I was just like, oh yeah, Rick died under a bridge, and after that I just kind of stopped watching it, sort of thing. And so I've chosen to not play the Ghostbusters, although I do own it, and Paul is going to drag me in there one day, I'm sure.
Well, as a little bit of gossip relation to the Invisible Hours, when we were putting it together, we had fairly significant conversations with Universal about doing a sequel to John Carpenter's The Thing in the style of the Invisible Hours. Sadly, never came to pass, but I think would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
There was one IP I wanted, and it got announced. when Assassin's Creed got announced, and then they stopped it, which is Splinter Cell. Splinter Cell is perfect for it.
Oh yeah.
And that was going to happen.
I'm dying. I certainly hope so. Like I really enjoy Aspire 1. I know it's rough around the edges. I know the devs. Like I've always loved Michael who ran the studio. Like his ambition and love for Kojima and just trying to get the vibe. It's underrated. I just wish like a little more money, a little more time. It would have been a modern classic.
Yeah, sadly, that's frequently what it boils down to. You can have all of these great ideas, but just getting it into the world and
I mean, so
money
much
does.
of game development is knowing in your own mind as a designer, here's the ideal way to play the game. You can build that relatively easily compared to the version of the game where, now I've got to account for the interests and behaviors of players who are not me and don't think like me and don't want to do it like me. Like Aspire to me really is a game that is typified by that challenge, is that if you play it exactly the way it wishes it to be played, it's fantastic. The minute you start to branch off, like the resources get thinner and thinner, which is not to disparage the devs, it's just the reality of game development. It just gets thinner and thinner until you feel like, it feels a little rough.
Yeah. See, I've always been kind of a point and click kind of guy. So the Lucas games are very much part of my DNA. The Monkey Island series is essentially how I kind of define my childhood. I loved Monkey Island. I don't think there's a VR game in that. But then there was also a point and click Discworld game. A couple of them, actually. And I think, especially knowing the kind of like 7 or 8 major sort of genres of game, I think you could definitely play around in the Pratchett world in a big bad way in VR. There are so many different avenues in a world of magic, or you could dip into like the guards, and there's so many different places you could go. So I would love to see the Discworld world in like to stand in the Discworld world, to stand on the disc itself and see what's happening in that universe. That's something I would absolutely love. I like space. I do like space, like you were saying earlier when you were like, oh yeah, standing on Mars and just even being able to look around and aim and stuff. Being in space is something that absolutely still to this day. I acquired a Pimax from Ben from Beardo Benjo, and one of the first things I did was install Elite Dangerous because I wanted to see space in all of its glory and all of its clarity. And it's absolutely stunning. So that's the kind of things I lean towards, but I don't think Pratchett's got enough of a modern audience that anybody would care but me and maybe 20 other people. So I'm not holding my breath for that to appear.
With IP, often it's about understanding how to make people. How do you make it reach people? Star Wars it still needed to develop in order to maintain its influence.
We've seen plenty of Star Wars in VR.
I love Tales from the Galaxy.
Tales of the Galaxy is fantastic, yeah.
Great piece of content.
I think I own that.
I got it on Quest. I got it on Quest when it was on sale, and then I was just like, when it got announced getting all snazzy up for PlayStation VR 2, I bought it on day release, like the day we got the PlayStation come out, because it was out on that day.
I like the Vader stuff, but I much preferred Tales from the Galaxy. But just the vibe was really, really great.
Yeah, the Vader stuff, I like you say, it was fine, but I guess you may have already figured out at this point, I do quite like a good story. And that just kind of gave me a vibe of like 3 tiny tech demos kind of sandwiched in with then a lot of people, they were like, that's fine, but I really like the dojo. And that the
Yeah, the
dojo
dojo
was the thing for them.
dojo
And
was great. Just all the systems worked really well together.
yeah. And it almost felt like, even though that was a secondary thing, that was the big thing that people took away from that, was actually the dojo was pretty fun. And so this is where, so you're saying the Tales from the Galaxies. Wait, is that yeah, that one. That is a lot more sort of story based, and yeah, I
It's a
think
little
I've got
more
it on
refined.
PlayStation.
I wouldn't say it's much more story based, but the story content that's there is better integrated perhaps into the game.
Yeah.
But listen, for their time, the Vader stuff was really important and was like a big deal in terms of story at the time. First generation, that maybe was the first story focused title there was, I think, on Quest.
I say it was Quest 1 though, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Vader Immortal.
Yeah. I think I bought them on Quest,
Going
or
back a
then
long time.
played them on PC because they were cross-buy. I think I bought them on Quest and then realised they were cross-buy and thought I'm going to play on PC.
Yeah.
And Paul, what IP would you love to see adapted for VR?
Outside of Splinter Cell movie, I'm trying to think like more of like a movie IP rather than already a game IP.
Could be a game, why not?
Some favourite games. Devil May Cry, but I'm not sure if that'll work because it's all about the fast movement and keeping the combos, which might be a bit.
Oh man, I feel like Sorrento was almost there.
True, yeah.
No,
When you want to talk about a game with fast movement, tell that to Camouflage. Because you look at Batman and you think, yeah, there's no way I can be Batman in VR. Oh no, yeah, you totally can.
Yeah.
And I think a gun and a sword and a gun sword, yeah, I think that could totally work in VR.
Yeah, they could get it in
Paul, you got
somewhere.
to get started tonight.
Right. It's for Capcom.
Well, that's. I mean, you. I know you're obviously mildly joking, but then you are one thing that you do, and I absolutely love, is the world doesn't benefit from anybody shitting on an artist in any way, shape, or form. Like whether it's written, sung, painted, whatever. And you do a lot to encourage artists to get them to produce their stuff. You are just like, I've had my time, I've done pretty well. You show me your stuff. Like you reach out to the little guy and you actually want to see people's screenplays and stuff. Is there no, please, yeah.
No, there was a question at the end there. Go ahead.
No, I was wondering if there was anything that sort of drives you to do that, or is it just literally you paying it forward?
I think that's reason enough. I mean, I think that when I was coming up, there were lots and lots and lots of people who helped me, but I didn't always necessarily know where to get the help I thought I needed. I was benefiting from people's generosity, but at the same time, it was kind of unfocused. And so my development, my career, in my opinion, unfolded very slowly because I had to try it, learn from it, iterate, do it again. Did I meet someone? Is that helpful? I'm not really sure. Like, what I want for everybody is for every artist to be catapulted to the limit of their skill as fast as possible. What I don't want is for them to go beyond the limit of their skill, which is what happened to me. And yes, okay, I found benefit in that, but it's not an experience I would wish for somebody. The hardest thing as an artist is knowing when you're ready. That's the hardest thing to know, because how on earth are you supposed to have perspective? Like, well, I got all this enthusiasm, the opportunities in front of me, therefore I'm ready.
Yeah.
So the one thing I try and encourage is not just the stakes-free version of encouragement, which is like, go for it, everybody, which I do believe in. But we also need to be cognizant to say, well, are you ready? And if not, what do you need to do to be ready? Because that's the thing that's actually going to make this work, as opposed to just being, carelessly passionate about other people's ambitions.
So sort of like what
make it function.
Where you got with Invisible Hours, it's something completely different. Have you ever played a game and just thought, they were brave for trying this, but it actually works really well? Is there any game that's
all the time? All the time. Like I'm completely in. Okay. Right before we came to LA, we were at the Edinburgh Fringe, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, is a big arts festival in Edinburgh. It happens every year. And the thing that's so wonderful and unique about that festival is that normally if you go to live art or performance of some kind, it's in an institution that's designed to display that performance. The beauty of the Edinburgh Festival is that every nook and cranny of that city, every like pub meeting room, public toilet, university lecture hall, swimming pool, castle, theatre, cinema, all of them are filled with artists putting on performances that are not really polished yet. One of my most favorite things is unfinished art. Love the attempt. Love the attempt. I don't need to see something that's, finished. I love seeing, there's the spark of genius in somebody, or in this idea, or like, hey, this actor's got something. I love seeing people finding the opportunities to get a foothold, a handhold, to climb the wall. So I'm completely head over heels in love with everything that everybody makes. I love the attempt. Fucking go for it. Just don't overextend beyond your skill. Be on the fringe of it. Be on the fringe, but don't let your desire to do it get ahead of what you're able to do. Not fully. That's where you get into tough territory that can diminish your momentum and your motive to take action. Like, even though we're here talking about VR, like I was thinking about what am I actually playing, for instance, right? I have a Quest 3, which is what I use most of the time. I use it, I want to say, every single day. And to be completely honest, for the last like 2 years, yes, I've played other stuff along the way. There's one game that I've played every single day for 2 years. It's Dungeons of Eternity. And that is, for anyone who doesn't know, for anyone over 40, it's Gauntlet in VR. For anybody under 40, it's a 4-player co-op dungeon crawler that has perfectly hybridized in its melee combat. Physics driven and animation driven. It's just the perfect hybrid of those two. And it's so Moorish, so addictive. And that team is like, I don't know, 4 guys, I think. Again, I reached out to them. I was like, guys, whatever you do, if it ever has a story in it, please let me in there. I don't know if that will yield any opportunity or not, but nonetheless, I love to write a love letter to developers and to artists. I'm so excited to see what you're doing. It's so brilliant. There was another game I played in VR that was a flat game before. Is it called The Signifier? I think. Nobody played it. I want to stress.
I say
I was kind of buggy. I immediately hunted down developer. This is maybe a couple of years ago now. Hunted down developer. I said, listen, man, no matter what anybody tells you, this is fucking brilliant. And the thing that I loved about The Signifier is he did something that I don't think you ever see writers in any medium do successfully that often, which is that he wrote in a very verbose style that was absolutely compelling. Usually in the game when it's, there's too much dialogue, too much text, you're like, oh, okay, skip, let's get through this. But that game, I was like, man, this is riveting and so thoughtful, so smart, and is way smarter than I am in the ideas it's expositing in the story. And again, I sent him a love letter and said, listen, whatever you do, if I can be helpful to you, let me help out. He's working on something new now. We discussed, ultimately, I was like, look, I don't think actually me doing something on this is going to improve the product. I think you're going to do a better job of this than me. So we decided, look, I'll just admire from afar and you go and do it. I don't know what's known publicly about the new product, so I can't talk about it. But again, just a lone dev, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I love that VR is an ecosystem where a handful of people can make a product that can blow your mind.
Yeah.
You know, I miss the days when that was, happening more often in
Yeah.
games. I think we're starting to get back to it over the last year or two. But in VR, it just feels like it's perpetually there. And even though, yes, I want us to have massive hardware sales because I want everybody to sell tons of games, secretly, I'm like, well, kind of hope we don't sell so many that now like AAAs and quadruple A's pour into VR
Yeah.
and move out, and shunt out the little guy. Because I
Yeah.
love the experiment. When I was saying earlier about when I first played Tilt Brush, I used to go every single day through Steam and I would play every single VR product that people put out. People were just putting out like someone plugged two things together and said, "What is this something?" The experimental feeling of early Steam VR really was just magical.
We had this conversation with Nathan, yeah, because back in the early days when VR was just a blank slate, people didn't know what you could or you couldn't do with it. And so it was a combination of passion and just people throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, I remember grabbing something off Steam that was it was a game where your arms were motorbikes, and you would like drive around a stunt course, and I was like, "This is awesome."
That sounds. Wait.
Yeah.
So your arm was an entire motorbike?
Yeah, both of your arms were motorbikes, and it sort of meant that you functioned like a sort of 4-dimensional car, like a 5-dimensional car. It was wild, and it was on the moon because of low gravity.
Yeah,
and I just think, I wonder what happened to that, Dev. No idea.
That's something we were talking with Mark about, in the sense that back in the early days, there were so many different games, there were so many different devs, there were people putting all kinds of stuff out. And then you're like, I played that on the DK2. Whatever happened to it? And it just kind of fizzled out when they shifted to the CV1 and the software changed. It wasn't ported, and then the devs either moved on or I don't know, got jobs as accountants or something. Like it was such a Wild West kind of time, but it was a time that I kind of miss. I kind of miss those Wild West days of just figuring it out. Whereas now there are
for Wolf and Wood was a lone dev, Ryan Bufeld, I think his name was. He made Chair in a Room Greenwater. That was, I think he made the Chair in a Room before that, and that was on cardboard. Chair in a Room Greenwater was a navigable version of that. It was fantastic. Then he made The Exorcist, which one guy made The Exorcist. Think about that for a minute. I mean, that thing. Okay, it's limited in its production, but the atmosphere on it is terrific.
Yeah,
in atmosphere, dripping atmosphere. And then went on to do the thing where you smash up a hotel room like a rock star, kind of like a
Hotel R&R, is it? Or something?
But again, a good solid game. Like that's an incredible CV that he has.
Yeah,
I want to know. I think he's moved out of VR into flat games. So I'm like, he was right there, right there.
Yeah, it's the issue was that because it is, even though it might be huge to some of us, it is in the grand scheme of things not huge, and so there's not a load of people getting rich off of making VR games, and so sadly people do. So you notice the likes of Fast Travel. A lot of their stuff is being both VR and flat, and a lot of people are diversifying and making the games both ways. I guess I would rather have that than nothing.
Well, sure, there's nothing wrong with that.
We lose a lot of people.
I don't feel even in the least bit territorial about people trying to survive.
Oh no, I want them to survive. There are many studios that I don't want to see them go.
All of this stuff is relative to budget, right? It how big or small the marketplace is kind of doesn't matter as long as the amount you're spending to make the product is accordant with the size of that market.
Mm-hmm.
The difficulty comes, and I say this with respect. I know that Meta is figuring it out. The store is messy. The store is messy.
Mm-hmm.
Needs to be curated. I understand what they're trying to do, but in the act of doing it, they're going to cut off their nose to spite their face a little bit here. There needs to be some kind of proper curation. I know that there's conversation about trying to get there, but we got to move here. These developers do not have a lot of track. Let's be real.
No.
So again, if anyone from Meta's listening, come on, guys, let's sort it out.
I always think about a game made by a small studio. They only made the one VR game and they went to flat. It's Odd Book Studio, which is in Manchester. I made The Lost Bear. The VR game was The Lost Bear. It was like, that was its own thing. You were playing basically on a cinema screen. But you were sat in a chair on this big screen in like a theatre. But the theatre changed to where you were in the world. So just say a bee might fly out the side of the thing, but then it might fly into the room with you and things like that.
Loved all that stuff.
And it was very clever. And then the announcer doing Tales of Iron, which was like a Metroidvania type game. I said, "Are you doing this in VR?" And they said, "No." They didn't really do well with a Lost Bear, I think. So it was like, we're doing it flat. It's like a flat screen game.
Which is a shame. I did look because the I've clicked away from it now. Signifier. I looked up that, and it looks completely up my alley. Like, why do I not know about this game? So I'm definitely going to take that recommendation on board, and I will feedback and let you know what I think about that. Maybe I'll stream it and you can prod me.
To be real going into it, it's buggy. But in spite of that, you can just see his talent oozing out of this thing. Whatever he does next is going to be fantastic.
Well, they've done a director's cut of it as well, so I don't know whether they've ironed out a few of the potential issues on that. Good question, actually.
It was flat before it was VR, so report.
Yeah, but then it looks like the next thing they're working with Blumhouse for the simulation.
Oh, I guess he's announced it. Yeah. The Blumhouse are getting into games, as you know.
Yeah, so that could be something incredibly special.
Yeah, we talked about the concept, and he's too good for us. Is my opinion. We're lucky to have an artist like that making stuff for our media.
So yeah, you're certainly more of a horror guy than me, Paul. But that's. I mean, let's face it, Blumhouse don't do things by halves. For sure.
I was actually shocked the other day. I didn't actually enjoy the movie, but put the monkey on. Because it went on Prime Video about the toy clapping monkey that bangs the drums. And I was just waiting for Blumhouse to come up, because anytime these days you put a horror movie on, it's Blumhouse.
They are driving it.
It actually wasn't. It was Black Bear or something. I thought, I was expecting Blumhouse to show up because I was watching a horror movie. They seem to do a lot. And
so, well, you mentioned something earlier about a very dark version of Half-Life, or a darker version of Half-Life Alyx, which I would absolutely love to get the full lowdown on that one, but I imagine speaking about it would be a lot harder. Have you ever tempted to, well, like I said, the Outside the Wire kind of goes left, and then it has what I guess you could call a somewhat stereotypical, not stereotypical, that's harsh, but it has a happy ending. Like the happy ending, if you were to get so far into the movie and say, right, what's the happy ending to this? You could probably get there. Are you ever tempted to just be like, yeah, no, we're gonna let the warheads go.
Well,
It's
no
fine.
spoilers, no spoilers for the Invisible House, but I mean, you don't think that happened there?
Well, yeah, yes, yeah. I don't, like you say. It's one of those things you don't want to tell people about, but you want to tell people all about it. But when I was watching the movie, I was just like, I really want the warhead to go, but I don't think he'd be allowed to let that happen. Is there ever a world where you do actually try that, or was it always going to end that way?
An early draft of it, the warhead did launch, but then they had to destroy it in transit.
Oh, okay.
You kind of got both.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when you scope stuff for budget, you end up having to sort of move it back.
I mean, not that I this is going to sound like I'm very anti-America. I thought it would be incredibly brave to actually let it land.
Well, that budget is probably 1/10 of the budget that we got to use for this, and if we'd done that, it would have been a much smaller movie, I think.
Yeah, I'm the guy who was just like, it'd be kind of messed up if that happened. I hope it does, and then it never does. But yeah, I was when I was watching Outside the Wire, I was like, yeah, okay, I would really love that to go kind of sideways and end up badly. But I mean, at the end of the day, you still managed to squeeze a message in there. I don't know whether that was. I presume, is that every writer's desire to get a little bit of just like a no, humanity can change, like we can be different.
Well, I think that no matter what you write, even if you're writing something that's very frothy, very poppy, there will always be inevitably some nucleus of human truth in it. Very hard to develop story in the absence of it. Even if you pick whatever movie you think has no message, I promise you, it's in there, because that becomes the mortar that holds the story bricks together for the writer, even if it ends up not being something that is really strongly or is not high in the mix of the final movie.
Yeah,
It's always that. It's always that.
yeah. And then there is always the other side of the coin that once you release something, even if it is as you wrote it and it is edited and filmed and all the other stages do go as you intend, the moment you get it into somebody else's hands, I suppose they could interpret it in a dramatically different way. And you'd be like, wow, I never even vaguely considered that. And yet here you are, you've watched the same material that I put out and you've come to this conclusion. That's
I think the joy of making large scale commercial art, like movies or big games, is that you give yourself over to the talent of the people around you.
Yeah.
That, I'm not a writer who's particularly interested in total control. There are a few projects like The Invisible Hours where I've had close to that. Where in some cases, in those cases, it's been kind of necessary also for the production to unfold, for me to have that level of control. I've worked on lots of stuff where I'm just, I'm a hired gun or a barnacle on the side of the ship, or, a cog in the machine. Yes, you want to arrive with a vision, but the most exciting part is seeing what other people are going to do. And sometimes it will be something that you don't like, but it's still interesting. I'll tell you an anecdote, which was that many, many, many years ago, when I was a teenager, I was a chef. And I learned that all head chefs are insane. And the reason why they're insane is that they are artists who only ever get negative feedback. Their only interaction with the audience is someone saying, I didn't like it, send the plate back. No one comes in to say, guys, you did a great job. So they all go insane. And that led through a series of events to a habit that I try and embody, which is when I go to a restaurant, if I can avoid it, I don't want to pick off the menu. I say, whatever the chef likes to make, I would love to eat. And I've had some of the worst meals of my life doing that. And some of the best. and some of the most boring and some of the most exciting. But I love the attempt. That's the fun.
That's interesting way of going about it, and presumably with that kind of knowledge, you generally do say that was a good attempt. Like you do try and send a good message back, I guess.
Oh no, I don't even. This is not even about me going in and saying what I thought of the dish. It's giving them autonomy is the gift. That's my way of saying thanks for being in there. I'm not, unless every so once in a blue moon I might go back and say this is fantastic. But most of the time, it's just for a servant to be able to go back to the kitchen and say, this guy wants to eat whatever you want to make. That's thanks. I'm not going to send it back. I'm going to eat whatever it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for serving me. And that's how I
want to try that.
Genuinely how I feel in production. There are times when if I get too attached to a vision, you start to get uncomfortable when you see someone railing against it. The best thing to do if you can, and it takes time also, because when you come in as an artist at the start of your career, the thing you're excited about is your own vision. But over time, in my experience, it evolves to say, well, I just can't wait to see what this person's going to do. And sometimes it'll be something that is so much better that I could possibly have conceived of. And other times it'll be garbage. But everybody got to do something. Everybody got to have an attempt.
Yeah.
Everybody died. People's mortgages got paid. School fees, food on the table. What are we complaining about? It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I am conscious of the time. We are coming to the final 10 minutes. So if anybody out there does have any questions for myself, Paul, or of course, Rob, I imagine all questions going to be aimed at Rob. But if you do have anything out there in the chat, please do by all means do let us know. And whilst the chat are coming up with anything potentially to ask us,
question to ask. For you, Rob, obviously, is there any
Please.
genres that you've not written in, which you'd like to, in either movie, games?
Well, it's interesting because certainly in flat games, because production cycles are so long, it's impractical to only work one genre in games. So over my career, I've worked in lots of different types of production, lots of different genres, big stuff, small stuff, and everything in between. Whereas in movies, you're kind of trying to focus so people are like, oh, he's the guy who does blank, which is odd. It's strange to be perhaps best known in games for murder mystery, I guess, and then in movies be doing action comedy, and those executives don't necessarily reconcile me with the idea of doing both. What I would love to do, I don't know what it would be yet, but what I would love to do is do a great game adaptation to a movie. I don't know what that game would be or should be, but I'm always on the lookout to say, well, this is something that I think I could make into a great movie. There's a few things out there of hearing at, but
it's dangerous. That is dangerous.
Well, I think the reason why it's so difficult to write game adaptations is twofold. One is so many big pieces of legacy IP. So if you look at like Tomb Raider or like Resident Evil, that sort of stuff, those games were made as interactive wish fulfillments for wishes that were created because of linear media, by which I mean, if you are scrolling through Netflix and the summary says, he's a hard-drinking cop who plays by his own rules, you're like, well, I'm not going to watch that. I've seen that a million times. But if I'm scrolling through Steam and it says, you're a hard-drinking cop, you play by your own rules, suddenly it sounds fun. Then when I try and adapt that back into linear media, you're back into the cliche territory that created the reason for the game in the first place. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that oftentimes there is a gulf between the content of the game and the culture of the game. For example, if you look at a game like DayZ, right? Big, very, very serious when it launched, almost like 28 Days Later, kind of like The Road, very somber game. But the reason why the game is such a hit is because of all the TikToks and Instagram reels of the funny ways that players betray each other.
Yeah.
The content of the game is serious. The culture of the game is comedy. So when you adapt that, well, where on the slider am I supposed to be in order to service both? So the key for me is either, really doing the meticulous science of where you're on that slider and solving the first problem, or being meticulous about what IP you choose to try and adapt. The Last of Us is easy because the culture and the content are basically in the same place, which is why they're able to do scenes that are kind of one for one. People are getting exactly what they want because the culture and the content is in the same place. But when you get into games that are successful because of their memification, then the gulf starts to go like this, and that's where it gets really tricky. But of course, that's where a lot of big IP is going, especially for someone like Blumhouse. It's really difficult because you have Poppy's Playtime. It's kind of comedy because it's reaction based in its success, but the content of the game is terrifying in principle. Really difficult to adapt.
So I'm not going to get.
I don't know.
I'm not going to get Job Simulator, the movie, anytime soon. Then no.
I don't see why not. I think all of those things are possible. Everything is possible. But it's about being judicious and conscientious about the problems that each individual IP creates. Is there a funny version of Job Simulator? Yeah. I think the content and the culture are pretty close to each other on that. I think it's kind of an easy adaptation. What I would love to do actually is Superhot. There's something really great there. I don't know how you take that mechanic, make it as interesting on film or on TV as it is in the game. That's the challenge. But there's tons of really cool stuff you could do.
How do you bring a muggle into that concept? Somebody has no idea what it is.
Time moves when you move is not necessarily that complex. The question is, how do you articulate it visually?
Yeah. How do you introduce an audience that have no real knowledge of Superhot to? How do you explain that in a world? That's how that works. I would love to see that. I absolutely would love to see that, but I could see that being a challenge. I could definitely see that being a challenge.
We've got one question in the chat. If you've got time to answer it. It's just a question saying from 13. She's an artist and she's curious on advice for artist block, and if you've had it, how have you got through it, basically?
I got great advice. When I was 16 years old, I went to visit a friend who lived in Canada, and it was the first time ever I had what I felt was creative block, artist block. And we would be, my friend and I were being driven by his dad to go to a bowling alley or something. And he overheard me talking about it. And he gave me a piece of advice I still use today, still resonates with me. So simple, sounds simple. He said, do something different. And what he meant was, what is the most different thing you can do to what you're trying to do? It doesn't mean, work on another project. It means like, I'm going to go hang gliding instead of trying to work on this painting or this story. Or I'm going to, I don't know what, I'm going to go and dig for Roman coins instead of try and work on this thing. Whatever you can do that is diametrically opposed to what you're doing, somehow, in my experience, eases off that part of the brain that's too tight to work. Do something different.
Sounds very useful. I normally just give up.
Hopefully that helps.
I don't normally just give up. I'll come back to it tomorrow when I'm doing a review. Sometimes I'm coming out to word what I want to say about something, and then I just go, I'll come back tomorrow. I'll probably fresh mind tomorrow.
I think that's part of it, right? Is that the brain gets tight, you need to relax. The question is, how can you optimize how relaxed it can get and how fast can it get there? That's why people talk about, I have my best ideas in the shower or sitting on the toilet, whatever it is, because you're in a moment where your brain can relax. But I think you get even more benefit if you say, okay, I'm not going to sit at the desk tomorrow. I'm walking out the door first thing in the morning, and I'm going to go, I'm going to go wild swimming in a lake. I'm going to eat something I've never eaten before. look at some art somewhere that's unlike anything that I would ever even think to do.
Mm.
I'm going to get in a black cab and point to a car in front and say, follow that car and see what happens. Whatever you do, the more different it is to what you're trying to do, the more you're going to discover you're capable of when you go back to the desk.
I would love to see a day in the life where you literally just get into a taxi and just be like, follow that car, and then just how do you explain that when they arrive? And then you're like, oh, okay. There's but yeah, that would be
the last time I did it, I got into a cab to follow that car. It was a date actually with my wife, and we were like, what are we gonna do? Oh, let's get in the car and say follow that car. See where they go. Maybe they're going somewhere interesting. So we got on the back of the black cab, so follow that car. The cabbie said, I've been waiting for that my whole life. We followed this car. We ended up in Soho. But the thing that this is such a pathetic reason for the chase to stop, which was that they made an illegal turn and it was like, can't do it. So we lost them. We go out to a restaurant. It's fine. But again, we wouldn't have ended up at that restaurant and had the unique experience if we hadn't said follow that car.
Yeah. Sort of left you to, well, now we have to do something as all because we're here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yes, and.
Yeah, that is absolutely astonishing, like advice, and I am gonna try and follow that car more. I think.
Mm-hmm. So Fane said in the chat, she said thank you, she'll remember that and try it in the future.
Keep us posted.
Yeah, and I so like you incredibly generous with your time tonight, Rob.
Yeah.
I very much appreciate it. It's I don't know what time in the world for you, but yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out and playing with us today. And we're aiming for number 3. We're going to jump number 4. We're going straight to number 3, and I'm pretty confident you are the one that's going to get us there. So. Hear that.
Oh yeah. That's for anyone who has missed this at the start. Paul saying, "Listen, how what's the listenership like? How are we doing?" So that he received an email telling him he was number 6 in the Canadian Tech Podcast chart. I looked up who's number 5. It's the New York Times podcast, Hard Fork. We can beat that, guys. Come on.
Yeah, we can.
Hard Fork.
Anything else you want to
give a shout out?
Plug, pimp, like socials.
I
the
do.
Invisible
Before
Hours, get it on Steam.
Were there more chats, Paul?
No, that was just the one today. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, you can find me on all socials. I'm at Rob Yescombe. And the main thing is, I would love people to try the Invisible Hours. Having said that, because we're going to remaster it, no, you can hang on for the remaster. Why not? It's going to be better. Give me a year, we'll get to it. Yeah, keep pushing.